President Trump getting involved tonight in a major foreign policy controversy. The mystery surrounding missing Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi. A Washington Post contributor. Turkish authorities believe he was killed in the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. And it's a foreign policy problem for this White House because of its pivot to the Saudis in the Middle East. The first lawmaker to call for congressional action in connection to this crisis, Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky, joins us now to weigh in. Senator, good to have you with us.
Thank you.
This is a mess. I mean, this is a really difficult situation because of the relationship the U.S. has had with the Saudis, and I know that you've been critical of that in the past. Senator Corker, your GOP colleague, says now he has looked at U.S. intelligence that convinces him. He says so far what we know, everything points to the Saudis. What do you know? Absolutely,
and that's what the Turks have said from the very beginning. This looks like two planes, private planes of Saudi security or intelligence operatives came in, and there's no sign of the journalist. And so, to me, this is just one more reason why we should be very suspect about selling arms to the Saudis. If they have the ability and also the audacity to go into another country and kill a journalist, these aren't the kind of people maybe that we want to be selling arms to.
And there are those who say, listen, we need to wait. We need more evidence here. The Saudis say we're going to welcome the Turkish authorities to come and look around at the consulate, and that there is more fact-finding to do. So those who say, listen, the Saudis have been moving in a more modernized, more Western-friendly direction. The Turks have not. What do we do with that equation?
Well, I think you could say that there may not be proof that they've killed the journalist or even that the journalist has been killed yet. But what you do have evidence of is that the Saudis have been bombing civilians in Yemen for over a year now. Several million people live on the edge of starvation. Yemen's one of the poorest countries in the world. 80% of their food is imported, and the Saudis are blockading and preventing food and medicine from arriving in Yemen. And I don't see a national interest there. And if there were a national interest for the United States in Yemen, we should vote on it. The Constitution says Congress votes on war. President doesn't get to decide. And really, I think that it backfires because so many civilians are being killed in Yemen that really, when they pick up a fragment of a bomb and it says made in the U.S., I don't think they leave with a warm, fuzzy feeling. It's sort of the blowback that actually encourages terrorism around the world.
Yeah, and there's a lot of proxy activity from a number of nations going on in that current conflict that doesn't seem to be resolving anytime soon. You've got bipartisan support, at least for really aggressively looking at this and moving forward. Democrat Senator Chris Murphy says if this is true, what's been alleged, that the Saudis lured a U.S. resident into their consulate and murdered him, it should represent a fundamental break in our relationship with Saudi Arabia. The president has said he's talked about this multiple times at the highest levels. He is demanding answers. He wants to know everything. Where does the relationship go from here?
I think there's growing opposition to what the Saudis are doing in Yemen, and this just adds to it. About a year ago, Senator Murphy and I had a resolution to stop the arms sales to Saudi Arabia, and it got about 25 votes out of 100. Not enough to do anything. About 6 months ago, we had another vote, and we got 47 votes. So we grew from 25 people opposed to Saudi Arabia selling arms to them to 47. I think if we were to have another vote in the next week or two, I think you'd actually get a majority of the Senate who says, hey, we need to back off. And so I don't think we actually need proof, but there's a lot to indicate that they were involved. But there's enough proof to say that they have been involved with killing civilians in Yemen and that we do not have a national security or a vital interest in Yemen.
Okay. The Saudi ambassador to the U.S. says this: these are malicious leaks and grim rumors, and he actually says the kingdom is gravely concerned about Khashoggi. There's been an outright denial from them.
They're concerned because they got caught. There's pictures of Saudis going into the embassy. The Turks said it was Saudis. We have the tail numbers of the private planes that flew them in. We know where the planes went on the way home. We know what time they got home. I think we may eventually see the faces, same way we did with the Russians. We actually saw the faces of the people who perpetrated the crime. So, no, I think unless the evidence is hidden, I think we may eventually know who did this.
I want to ask you, too, about your wife was with us last week. She penned an open letter saying that she's become very worried. You suffered a very painful, significant physical attack last year. You happened to be at the baseball practice where Steve Scalise was almost shot to death. And she talks about now sleeping with a loaded gun by her bed. We now have a lot of very difficult political discourse, a lot of heat on both sides going on out there. The former Attorney General Eric Holder is getting some attention for something he has said. I want to play that.
But Michelle says that, when they go low, we go high. No. When they go low, we kick them.
Now, many would argue he's not advocating violence there. It's a rhetorical flourish, but certainly there's plenty of animosity on both sides.
I think it's the same sort of thing as, you know, when Cory Booker says, get up in their face. I don't think either one of them literally want to incite violence, but they have to realize that when they tell people to get up in your face, that there are some crazy, unstable people out there. There are truly people who have anger issues. The guy that shot over 200 rounds from a semi-automatic weapon at us at the ball field was an angry guy. He was the guy that would go down to the city council and yell and scream and get angry and red in the face. He once hit a neighbor with the butt of his gun. He had all of these anger issues, but then when people stoke that and say, get up in their face, go to Washington, he showed up at the ball field that day, and as he started shooting at us, he yelled, this is for health care. And then when they finally were able to kill him, in his pocket was a list of 5 or 6 conservative Republicans that he came there intending to kill. So instead of saying get up in their face, we should say, you know, let's have constructive dialogue. Let's, you know, forcefully present our position, you know, in a verbal way, in an intellectual way. Look, I still have a lot of intellectual questions about how Kavanaugh will rule. I voted for him, and I thought it was a disgrace what they did to him, but I will still continue to debate and advocate for privacy and for the Fourth Amendment, and I may have disagreements with him over time, but I thought it was a disgrace, the yelling and the screaming and the people, the death threats to the Kavanaugh family. I thought it was all disgraceful.
Yeah. Threats on all sides. We can do better than that. Senator, great to have you with us. Thank you.
Thank you.